Or what if I told you that the course of human history has been shaped by the actions of one country? What if that country is Russia? This is not a tale of fiction, but a stark reality that unfolded on the world stage just a few years ago. Our story begins with the Ukraine war, a conflict that rocked the foundations of international relations and left an indelible mark on the annals of history. The war's origins can be traced back to Russia under the leadership of President Vladimir Putin. Despite warnings and diplomatic efforts, Putin's deceitful justifications for war were laid bare, his failed propaganda tactics exposed for all to see. But this is not just a story about one man's ambition, it's about the global response to that ambition. The world watched as Putin's actions united NATO and the international community in a rare show of unity against aggression. The world saw the truth behind the lies, and in doing so, it strengthened Ukraine's resolve. But let's not forget the role of the international community in this tale. The world didn't just watch from the sidelines, it acted. From increasing economic sanctions to supporting Ukraine's defense, the global community stood firm against further Russian aggression. In doing so, it emphasized the importance of truth and democracy in the face of authoritarian threats. The Ukraine war marked a pivotal moment in Russia's history, setting the stage for a series of events that would have lasting impacts on the world. It was a moment that revealed the true nature of power, the fragility of peace, and the enduring strength of unity. From the ashes of conflict, a new chapter in world history was written, one that continues to unfold to this day. Russia's actions in Ukraine laid bare the imperfections of the United Nations. The UN, an institution founded upon the principles of peace, justice, and respect for human rights, found itself at a crossroads. As the conflict in Ukraine escalated, Russia, a key player in the UN, found itself suspended from the Human Rights Council. This was a historic moment, a clear signal of the UN's stance against Russia's actions. However, this suspension also underscored the limitations of the UN. Despite the organization's efforts, it couldn't prevent the atrocities unfolding in Ukraine. The world watched in horror as the principles that the UN was supposed to uphold seemed to crumble under the weight of the conflict. These events prompted a global outcry for reform. Voices from around the world called for the UN to uphold international norms and to take decisive action. But this is easier said than done. The UN is a massive machine, its gears grinding slowly, often hindered by political deadlock and bureaucratic red tape. The situation in Ukraine highlighted a crucial point: the need for a re-evaluation of our global institutions. It's not enough to react to crises. We must anticipate them, prevent them, and when they do happen, respond effectively. This requires accountability at all levels, from the individual nations that make up the UN to the UN itself. We need to ensure that human rights are not just words on a piece of paper, but are reflected in our actions and policies. In a world where conflicts are increasingly complex and interconnected, our global institutions must adapt. They must become more agile, more responsive, and above all, more effective in upholding the principles they were founded upon. In the end, it's not just about reforming the UN, it's about creating a world where every nation is held accountable for its actions, where human rights are protected, and where peace is more than just a distant ideal. The war in Ukraine exposed the cracks in the UN's facade, forcing the world to confront the reality of its flawed system. 1 year after the Ukraine invasion, faint cracks began to appear in the facade of Putin's rule. This was a time marked by Putin's repressive regime, a regime that had no qualms about cracking down on civil society. Any form of dissent was swiftly silenced, and political opponents found themselves behind bars. The state of fear that had been carefully cultivated was palpable, with ordinary citizens navigating an existence shrouded in uncertainty. Rumors of further military mobilization swirled around, feeding into the unease. But it wasn't just the whispers of war that were cause for concern. The very nature of Russia's military strategy had shifted. The war in Ukraine had forced the nation to adapt, to pivot from traditional warfare to a war of attrition. This was a battle where superior numbers and resources were the key to victory. And then there was the Wagner Group. This private military company, led by oligarch Yevgeny Prigozhin, was known for their brutal tactics. Their methods of recruitment were a chilling echo of Soviet history, stirring up memories better left forgotten. The group's involvement in the war was a worrying development, not just for the people of Russia, but for the world at large. The growing influence of Prigozhin and his Wagner Group raised questions about the power dynamics within Russia. Was this a challenge to Putin's power, or was it another piece in the elaborate game of chess that Putin was playing? The speculation was rife, adding another layer of intrigue to the already complex political landscape of Russia. Despite the protests and international sanctions, Putin remained firmly in power, his grip on Russia only tightening. The facade might have shown cracks, but the structure underneath was as solid as ever. Such was the paradox of Putin's rule. As Putin's rule continued, new power dynamics began to emerge within Russia. A key player in these shifting sands of power was none other than oligarch Yevgeny Prigozhin. Known for his deep pockets and deeper connections, Prigozhin's influence was growing at a rapid pace. But what made this oligarch stand out was his command over the private military company, the Wagner Group. This group was no ordinary militia. It was known for its brutal tactics, often employed without remorse or hesitation. Their recruitment methods harked back to the days of the Soviet Union, stirring a sense of déjà vu among those who remembered those times. As the Wagner Group expanded its reach, so did Prigozhin's power and influence, leading to whispers of a potential challenge to Putin's rule. These whispers weren't confined to hushed conversations in dimly lit corridors. They were echoing in the grand halls of Russia's political elite. Speculation was rife. Some saw Prigozhin as a puppet master, pulling the strings from the shadows. Others saw him as a rival, ready to take on Putin's stronghold. But amidst this speculation, one thing was clear. The power dynamics within Russia were not as they used to be. The stage was no longer dominated by a single player. Other actors were stepping into the spotlight, their shadows growing longer with each passing day. The chessboard of Russian politics was being rearranged, piece by piece. As we watched these power dynamics shift and evolve, we couldn't help but wonder, what did this mean for Russia, for Putin, for the rest of the world? One thing was certain, the power dynamics within Russia were shifting, hinting at a possible change in the country's political landscape. The actions of Russia have had far-reaching impacts, reshaping the world as we know it. The Ukraine war, an aggressive act of expansionist ambition, has not only disrupted the lives of millions, but also united NATO and the international community in a shared resolve against aggression. This unity, born of necessity, has underscored the importance of global cooperation in the face of threats to peace and security. But the war has also exposed the imperfections of the United Nations, an institution built to foster peace and uphold human rights. Its inability to prevent the atrocities in Ukraine has led to calls for reform, a re-evaluation of global institutions to ensure they serve their purpose effectively. This incident has highlighted the urgent need for accountability and protection of human rights in the global arena. The rule of Putin has been a focal point in these events. His government's repressive regime, the silencing of opposition, and his imperial ambitions have created a state of uncertainty and fear, not just within Russia, but around the world. The world has watched as Putin's Russia cracks down on civil society and imprisons political opponents, a stark reminder of the dangers of authoritarian rule. The power dynamics within Russia have also seen shifts. The involvement of private military companies such as the Wagner Group has raised concerns due to their brutal tactics and recruitment methods. The growing influence of oligarchs like Yevgeny Prigozhin has sparked intense speculation and a potential challenge to Putin's power, adding yet another layer of complexity to an already intricate situation. As we look to the future, it's clear that the actions of Russia will continue to shape our world for better or for worse. The consequences of these actions will be felt far beyond Russia's borders, challenging our understanding of global norms, power dynamics, and the very essence of freedom and democracy. The world watches and waits, poised on the brink of an uncertain future, as the impact of Russia's actions continues to unfold.